If you'd asked me 6 months ago if I'd ever fall for someone at work, I would have laughed and said, hell no. I had rules about that kind of thing, firm, carved-in-stone rules. But then Eric joined the team, and everything I thought I knew flew straight out the window. I work in a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago, one of those casual but overworked places where everyone's in hoodies but somehow still always behind on deadlines. I'd been there for 3 years, long enough to have a routine and a favorite corner desk I'd grown territorial about. Then came the email. Welcome Eric to the brand strategy team. Just another new hire, I thought, no big deal, until he walked into our Monday morning huddle. Tall, dark hair, sharp jaw, softened by a nervous smile. He looked a little lost, clutching a branded water bottle and wearing a button-up that was trying too hard to look casual. When our manager sat him right next to me, so he can shadow someone experienced, I knew I was in trouble. The first thing he said to me was, "This your desk? It's so far from the snacks." I chuckled. Yeah, that's intentional. I'd weigh 200 pounds if I sat any closer to the snack bar. He grinned. Guess I'll have to learn some discipline then. And just like that, I was gone. At first, it was harmless. Just jokes and work talk. Him asking where to find the good coffee, me teasing him about still using Internet Explorer. Yes, really, he swore it was just to log into some legacy client portal. But then came the late nights, when we were the only two still in the office, hunched over slide decks and deadline stress. One night, around 9:30 after finishing a brutal presentation for a picky client, I leaned back in my chair and said, "We need drinks. Now." He looked up, rubbing his temples. Please. If I hear the words brand synergy one more time. 15 minutes later, we were at a dive bar 2 blocks down. Sticky floors, loud music, cheap beer. It wasn't fancy, but after a long day, it felt like heaven. We drank, talked, laughed a little too hard for a Tuesday night. Somewhere in the middle of our second round, I mentioned my ex. Just casually. Eric paused. So, you're into guys? I nodded. Yeah. He didn't say anything at first, just nodded back, slowly. Cool. That was it. But after that moment, the way he looked at me changed. He started texting me outside of work, funny TikToks, random thoughts, late night questions about nothing. In the office, he'd stand a little too close, touch my arm when he didn't need to, lean in to look at my screen when he could have just asked me to share it. It wasn't overt, nothing anyone else would have picked up on. But I felt it, that pull, the tension. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Friday. We were stuck finishing a last-minute report. Everyone else had already dipped out for happy hour, but Eric and I stayed behind, eating pad thai at our desks, music playing low from my Bluetooth speaker. When we finally finished around 8, I offered him a ride home. His place was out of the way, but I didn't care. He lived in a tiny studio near the lake. Clean, minimalist, way neater than mine. Want to come up for a beer? He asked. I hesitated for half a second. Sure. His place smelled like fresh laundry and citrus. We sat on the couch, shoulders brushing, talking about nothing and everything. And then, quiet. I've never done this before, he said. Done what? He looked at me, really looked. Wanted to. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a rushed kiss. Not clumsy, not hesitant. It was slow, deliberate, like he'd been thinking about it for a while and just needed a quiet moment to gather the courage. His lips were warm, soft, a little unsure at first, but steadying the second he felt me kiss him back. When we pulled away, he didn't look embarrassed or panicked. Just searching, like he was trying to figure out what came next. Was that okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, a little breathless. It was. He smiled, relief flickering across his face. Then we just sat there. Close, quiet. I think we both knew we were towing a line. Office romances were messy, complicated, but in that moment, none of it seemed to matter. I left shortly after, not because I wanted to, but because I wasn't sure what it meant. And I needed space to think. He walked me to the door, and we didn't say much. No promises, no declarations, just a soft, loaded, "See you Monday." The weekend stretched endlessly. I tried to stay busy, laundry, errands, doom scrolling, but Eric was there in the back of my mind. That kiss, the way he looked at me afterward, like he wanted more, but also didn't know how to ask for it. Monday came faster than expected, and as soon as I walked into the office, I felt it. The tension. It wasn't just in my head. Eric glanced up from his desk when I passed, our eyes locked for half a second too long. Then he looked away. All day we acted normal. Overly normal. No lingering looks. No inside jokes. But the silence between us was louder than any conversation. Later, around 6 p.m., most of the office had cleared out. I stayed behind, tying up loose ends. I didn't expect him to come by, but there he was, standing awkwardly at the edge of my cubicle, hands in his pockets. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Hey," I replied, spinning slightly in my chair to face him. "You want to grab dinner? Just talk?" I hesitated for maybe a second. "Yeah. Let me shut this down." We ended up at a Korean barbecue spot a few blocks away. The kind of place with loud music, smoky tables, and just enough distraction to keep us from diving in too deep too fast. "I didn't plan that," Eric said after the server left us with meat and sides. "Friday, I mean." "I figured," I said, managing a small smile. "Did you regret it?" He looked at me, eyes dark and honest. "No, I didn't expect to feel what I felt." That hung in the air between us. "I haven't really dated anyone." "Not seriously," he continued. "Definitely not a guy. But something about being around you, I don't know, it's different. Comfortable. Safe?" That word stuck with me. Safe. I leaned back in the booth, trying to stay cool even as my heart pounded. "So what now?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I want to find out." That night didn't end in another kiss. Just a long walk back to the train, shoulders brushing. We didn't hold hands. We didn't make plans. But it felt like something had shifted. The next few weeks were strange, quietly electric. At work, we kept things professional. No one suspected anything, and there wasn't anything to suspect, yet. Outside the office, we started spending more time together. Movies, walks, dinner at each other's places. The more I got to know him, the more I saw the layers. Eric wasn't just the attractive new guy. He was kind, thoughtful, funny in a dry, sarcastic way that took a minute to catch. He opened up slowly, cautiously, like he was still figuring out if it was safe to be himself. One night, we were at my place, sitting on the couch with half-eaten pizza and reruns of The Office playing in the background. He leaned his head against my shoulder and said, "I don't know what to call this." I rested my cheek against his hair. "Let's not call it anything yet," I whispered. "Let's just see where it goes." And we did. Dating someone secretly when you share a workplace is like trying to hide a wildfire with a damp paper towel. Every glance feels risky. Every innocent touch carries weight. And every moment you don't spend together at the office feels like you're trying too hard not to look like you're hiding something, which of course you are. We weren't official, not really. But the way Eric started coming over more often, bringing snacks he knew I liked, showing up in sweats, kissing me just because it felt like we were building something. The first time he stayed the night, I couldn't sleep. He was next to me, breathing slow and steady, his arm draped lazily over my stomach. And all I could think was, what if this goes wrong? What if I lose this? He shifted in his sleep, tightening his hold on me slightly, and that thought melted away. We got better at the dance. At work, we were coworkers. Nothing more. I helped him with strategy decks. He brought me coffee when he went on his afternoon break. Once, in a team meeting, our knees touched under the conference room table, and we both froze for a second before pretending it hadn't happened. Outside of work, we were learning each other. He learned I was always cold and hated mornings. I learned he only liked 2 kinds of cereal and folded his socks military style. He told me about his childhood, small town, conservative parents, a high school where the word gay was only ever said as an insult. That's why he'd never tried anything before, never even considered it a real possibility. "I didn't think I could be this," he said one night, curled beside me on the couch, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not until you." That hit me harder than I expected. Not just because of the vulnerability, but because I remembered feeling the same way once. I kissed his forehead, held him closer. We didn't talk more about it that night, but I felt something shift, like a door had opened. But not everything was smooth. One afternoon, my boss called me in and asked why I'd been spending so much one-on-one time with Eric lately. I played it off. Mentorship, team onboarding, just making sure he was up to speed. But I left that meeting feeling exposed, like maybe someone had noticed something we hadn't meant for them to see. That night, I told Eric, "We need to be careful," I said, like really careful. He nodded, serious. "I get it, I'll keep my distance." But keeping distance is easier said than done when your feelings are pulling you closer every day. The breaking point came at the quarterly team offsite. Our company rented a loft downtown for brainstorming sessions, catered lunches, and team bonding. Translation: slightly awkward icebreakers and way too much LaCroix. After hours of forced enthusiasm and post-it notes, people started drifting out for the day. A few of us stayed behind to help clean up, and somehow Eric and I ended up alone in the kitchen area, rinsing out empty coffee carafes. I bumped his shoulder playfully. "You realize we're the only 2 still working while everyone else is already at happy hour?" He smirked. "We're overachievers." He was standing close. Too close. No one was around. I could smell the faint cologne he always wore, something woodsy and clean. My pulse picked up. He glanced at the doorway, then back at me. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, voice low. I didn't answer. Just leaned in and did it. It was quick. Just enough to feel his breath catch. Just enough to remind me why this was also risky, and why it was worth it. A second later, footsteps echoed from the hall. We sprang apart, instinct taking over, and I turned just in time to see a coworker walking past the glass wall. They didn't look in, or if they did, they gave no reaction, but the rush of panic was enough to set both of us on edge. "We can't keep doing this," I said later that night, pacing my living room. "This half-in, half-out thing. It's driving me nuts." Eric sat on the couch, head in his hands. "I know. So what do we do?" He looked up at me. "We stop hiding." My stomach dropped. "You want to come out? At work?" "Not in a big announcement or anything," he said, "but I don't want to act like I'm ashamed of this. Of you. I don't think I can keep pretending we're just friends." I sat beside him, slowly. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yeah, I'm scared, but I'm sure. Coming out at work isn't just a decision. It's a reckoning. A choice that reshapes how people see you, how you see yourself, and in some ways, how safe you feel in your own skin." So when Eric said he didn't want to hide anymore, I didn't take it lightly. We spent the whole weekend talking about it. No labels, no grand gestures, just what being honest might actually look like. "Maybe we just stop pretending," he said, his thumb tracing idle circles on the back of my hand. "No announcements, no updates to the org chart. But if someone sees us grab lunch together, or I laugh a little too hard at one of your bad jokes, so be it." I nodded. "And if someone asks?" "Then I'll say you're important to me." That Monday was nerve-wracking, not because anything dramatic happened. Nobody suddenly turned around and started whispering, but the energy had shifted. We no longer flinched if someone saw us leave the office together. We didn't avoid each other at the espresso machine. Still, there were moments. One day, in the break room, I overheard someone ask, "Are they, like, a thing?" The question wasn't mean-spirited, just curious. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to shrink into myself. I don't know who answered, but I heard a shrug and a nonchalant, "Maybe. Who cares?" progress. Then came the client trip. 3 days in Minneapolis for a pitch meeting with a huge potential account. It was just me, Eric, and our client manager, and one hotel room each. I figured we'd keep things professional. But the second we dropped our bags in our rooms, Eric texted, "Dinner? Not room service, real food." We ended up at a quiet Italian place near the riverfront. Shared a bottle of wine, argued about garlic bread ratios, laughed until my sides hurt. Back in the hotel lobby, he looked at me and said, "You know I've never done this before, right?" "What?" "This, like, dating, like actually letting myself want someone." I reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "You're doing pretty damn well for a first-timer." He smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. "You think we're going too fast?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, but I think it's okay to be scared." "I am too." The elevator arrived. We stood in silence on the ride up, the air thick with unspoken feelings. When the doors opened to my floor, I stepped out. He didn't, but he reached out, gently pulled me back in. The doors closed. "I don't want to sleep alone tonight," he whispered. That night wasn't about intimacy. It was about closeness. Trust. We lay there, tangled together under hotel sheets, the city lights bleeding through the curtains. At one point, around 2 a.m., I woke up to find him just watching me. "What?" I whispered, groggy. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "Nothing. Just glad I found you." I didn't say anything. Just smiled and let myself drift back into sleep with his arm wrapped around me. The next morning, we returned to work like nothing happened. Because to the outside world, nothing had. But inside, everything had changed. That week, we got the client. Our pitch landed perfectly, and suddenly, Eric and I were getting praise left and right. We smiled, nodded, played it cool, but every shared glance across the office carried a different kind of pride. Not just because of the win, because we were doing this. Us. Carefully. Honestly. Of course, not everything was smooth. There were whispers. There was one awkward incident where a team lead asked if it was appropriate that we were spending so much off-hours time together. But HR didn't care. There were no rules against coworkers dating, and honestly, people lost interest quicker than we expected. By the end of the month, we were just another couple who happened to work together. It wasn't news anymore. But one night, walking home from the train together, Eric stopped suddenly, right on the sidewalk. "I love you." He didn't plan it. He just said it. No build-up, no drama, just truth. I blinked. "Say that again?" He smiled. "I love you." And just like that, all those months of tension, of uncertainty, of holding back, it dissolved. "I love you too," I said. No hesitation, because I did. Somehow, in all the late-night work sessions and secret glances and whispered confessions, I'd fallen. Hard. After that night, after those 3 words, we didn't go back to how things were. We couldn't. It wasn't like the movies where everything suddenly became perfect. Loving someone, even when it's mutual, doesn't erase fear or pressure or the 1,000 little ways we second-guess ourselves. But something had shifted, something big. We started doing things like regular couples, grocery shopping, folding laundry, watching bad reality shows and pretending we hated them. I learned he talks in his sleep sometimes. Nonsense things, like defending spreadsheets or mumbling about conference room bookings. He learned I hate folding fitted sheets and will avoid it at all costs. At work, we stayed professional, but even then there were changes. He started calling me out in meetings, in a good way. That's a great point. My name actually had a similar idea in last week's sprint. Stuff like that. It was subtle, but it meant a lot. It showed he respected me, that our thing wasn't just behind closed doors. Then came the company holiday party. We'd talked about it in advance, agreed to arrive separately, stay low-key. But the moment we walked into that rooftop venue, it was clear things had changed. People knew. And no one cared. The music was loud. The cocktails were flowing. The lights twinkled across the skyline. We spent most of the night with our teams, chatting and laughing. But near the end, I found him alone by the dessert table, holding a plate of half-melted cheesecake. I walked over. "You look like a man contemplating life's big questions." He grinned. "Just wondering if eating a third slice makes me a bad person. It makes you someone with good taste." He looked around, then stepped a little closer. "You okay if I do this?" I didn't need to ask what he meant. He reached for my hand and held it. Lightly, confidently. No one batted an eye. We left together that night, walking through cold December air, our breath fogging in front of us. When we reached my apartment, he didn't follow me inside. Instead, he pulled me into a hug. Long, warm, silent. Then he said, "I've never been this happy and this scared at the same time." I nodded. That's how you know it's real. He stayed the night. The next morning, I woke up first. I just lay there, watching him sleep, his hair messy, arms slung over his face to block the light. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about where things were going, or what might go wrong. I was just in it. We kept growing from there. Slowly, carefully. Some days were amazing. Some were hard. We fought about stupid things, like how he leaves his wet towel on the bed, or how I always forget to reply to texts. But we learned. Adjusted. We got better at being us. And then one night, almost a year after that first kiss on his couch, he said something that hit me sideways. "I've been thinking about moving in." I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth. "You serious?" He nodded. "It just makes sense, doesn't it? We're either at your place or mine. We already split groceries half the time." I snore. I talk in my sleep about Google Sheets. We're even. We laughed. Then I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And just like that, it wasn't just a thing anymore. It was a life. Our life. Moving in together wasn't glamorous. It was IKEA runs and figuring out whose coffee mugs to keep and realizing we both owned the same set of overpriced noise-canceling headphones. It was arguing over shelf space and realizing we both hated cleaning the bathroom but loved cooking together. It was life. Messy, comfortable, and surprisingly ordinary in the best possible way. The first night in our shared apartment, we didn't do anything special. We ate leftover Thai food on the couch surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. Eric used one of them as a footrest and said, "This is peak domestic bliss." He wasn't joking. It was bliss, in a weird, cardboard-scented way. The routine changed, but the rhythm stayed. We'd wake up early, take the train together in mostly sleepy silence, work our separate corners of the office, steal glances during lunch meetings, and then come home to the same apartment, to the same couch, to each other. Sometimes we'd work late. Him on architecture competitions he still entered for fun, me on pitch decks for clients that needed everything yesterday. But we were doing it together, in the same space, existing in the same quiet orbit. Then came the weekend trip. We drove out to Michigan for 3 days just to get away. Found a cheap Airbnb near the lake. There was a wood-burning stove and bad cell service, and we spent more time offline than we had in months. On the second night, bundled up in the cold, he handed me a mug of tea and said, "You ever think about how none of this was supposed to happen?" I raised an eyebrow. "What, us?" He nodded. I wasn't supposed to be out. I wasn't supposed to fall for a coworker, and you definitely weren't supposed to be the guy who made it all feel easy. I leaned against him. "Yeah, well, life's weird like that." He laughed. Quiet. "We really broke all the rules, huh?" I looked up at him. Worth it. That night, lying beside him, I realized something. It wasn't the big stuff that mattered. The holiday parties, the dramatic confessions, the brave I love yous. It was everything in between. Him stealing the blankets, the quiet morning coffee, the way he always knew when I needed a hug, even before I did. It was love, not in some fireworks and music way, but in a Tuesday night leftover kind of way. Steady, familiar, real, We went back to the city after the weekend, back to our life, and nothing felt different, except it was, because we weren't hiding. Not from each other, not from the world, and that, in the end, made everything we went through worth it. It's strange how fast something becomes your new normal. Waking up with Eric beside me, arguing over which cereal to buy, figuring out how to balance us with everything else. Work, deadlines, family, life. There were still bumps, of course. We weren't perfect. His mom came to visit once, totally unannounced. I walked into the apartment wearing nothing but gym shorts and a towel around my neck, and there she was, standing in our kitchen, like a twist ending I hadn't seen coming. Eric froze. I froze. The cereal I was holding hit the floor. She didn't say anything at first, just blinked once, twice. Then, finally, with the flattest voice imaginable, "I see you weren't expecting company." The next 20 minutes were some of the most awkward of my life. But somewhere between the third cup of coffee and Eric's overly detailed story about how we met at work, she softened. She didn't say much, but she didn't leave either. That felt like a win. Later that night, Eric curled up beside me on the couch and muttered, "Well, she didn't disown me, so that's progress." "She's welcome back anytime," I said, "as long as she calls first." Then came the pandemic layoffs. We were lucky. Our company downsized, but neither of us lost our jobs. Still, stress levels skyrocketed. Working from home in a one-bedroom apartment sounded romantic at first, but after 6 weeks of both of us taking Zoom calls at the kitchen table, we nearly lost our minds. I started putting up signs that said, "Do not talk to me, I'm in a meeting." He countered by stealing all my pens and holding them hostage. But we made it through. Not just because we loved each other, but because we started treating our relationship like a living thing. Something that needed care, space, patience. One night, months later, we were sitting on the fire escape, eating popsicles and watching the city blink around us. The air was warm. He had his legs pulled up to his chest, hoodie sleeves bunched around his wrists. Out of nowhere, he said, "I've been thinking." I turned toward him. "Dangerous." He rolled his eyes. "Shut up, I'm serious." I waited. "I know we didn't plan this," he said, "and I know how we started wasn't ideal. But this? Us? It feels like the best wrong turn I've ever taken." My throat tightened. "Yeah, me too." Then he added, quieter, "I think I want to do this for real. For the long haul." I didn't say anything right away. Just reached out, took his hand. And maybe that was enough. Because loving him never looked like a fairy tale. It looked like spreadsheets and sock drawers and getting takeout when we were too tired to cook. It looked like learning, fumbling, apologizing, trying again. It looked like two guys who broke all the rules and built something better in the wreckage. No big moment, no dramatic kiss in the rain. Just this life, our life, side by side. And honestly, I wouldn't change a damn thing.